Hi guys, welcome to the Attic. My name's Mark Jago. I'm a philosophy professor in the UK. Today I want to talk to you guys about proof trees in modal logic. So I recently made a video on this topic, proof trees in modal logic. In that one, we're looking at the basic rules we need to do proofs in modal logic. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take that stuff and extend it, add to it, so we can do proofs in all the different systems of modal logic. The good news is, if you've already got to grips with that stuff, adding these extra bits, it's really simple, but it really broadens out the kind of things you can do using proofs in modal logic. Okay, so if that sounds good to you, do me a favor before we get going. Give this video a big old thumbs up. That really helps me reach more people on YouTube. And if you haven't done that already, why not subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications. Okay, so we're going to kick off with a really quick recap of how we do proofs in modal logic. So we're not just going to write down a single sentence on its own. We're going to put a number next to each sentence. Okay, so that might be a 0 there and a 0 there, and it might be a 1 there. All of the rules from propositional logic carry over. We add in the tags, but those rules don't do anything with the tags. So for instance, we're going to have some tag on that premise, and the rule tells us add the same tag to the conclusions. Let's look at the diamond rule. If we've got diamond A, N, what we're going to do is extend the branch and add a M, where M is some tag that we haven't used so far. We also need to say that M is accessible from N, and we're going to write that down like this. Now let's have a look at the box rule. If we've got box A, we're going to need an extra premise there. If I've got both those bits of information, then I can add the information that A is true at M. If we've got not box A followed by some tag, nice and simple, we just transform that into diamond not A and add the same tag. If we've got not diamond A followed by some tag, then pretty much the same thing, we transform that into not box A followed by the same tag. So in these rules, it's always the same tag that gets added to the conclusion. If we're trying to prove some conclusion from the premises, what we do is we write down the premises, the negation of the conclusion, and we apply the rules that we've just talked about. If the tree closes, then we've proved that conclusion from those premises. Okay, so I've emphasized proving or not proving in basic modal logic K because, as we know, there's lots of different modal logics out there, and we can tweak this tree test in order to simulate all of those different modal logics. So by adding an extra rule, we can do proofs in KT or K45 or whatever, okay? So let me show you how to do that. So in addition to basic modal logic K, the logics that we tend to be interested in are the ones got by adding any combination of the following 5 rules. We've got the D rule, the T rule, the B rule, the 4 rule, and the 5 rule. And we can add those rules in any combination to basic modal logic, and we get logics like KT45. Okay, so that would be basic modal logic K with the T, the 4, and the 5 rule added. So we usually understand those logics in terms of axioms. So we add additional axioms to basic modal logic. There's the D axiom, the T axiom, the B axiom, the 4 axiom, and the 5 axiom. We add any combination of those, and that gives us the logics that we're interested in. In terms of a tree test, we're going to have a rule which corresponds to each one of these. And these rules, they don't really follow the axioms very closely because, like I said before, the tree test, it's much more focused on the modal logic semantics. So what these tree rules are going to do is simulate the conditions that we add to the models to give us models of KT4 or whatever. So let's have a look at how that goes. Okay, so modal logic KD, that corresponds to serial frames. Frames where for every world, there's always an accessible world. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a tree rule, and we're going to say, if you've got a branch and it's got something N on it, then you can add N to M where m is a new number, a new tag. Okay, so you can always add a new tag to your branch for free. Modal logic KT corresponds to reflexive frames, frames where every possible world has a little loop on it. Every world is accessible from itself. So we're going to simulate that in our trees by saying you can always write down n arrow n. So if you've got n in your tree already, you can always add a loop from n to itself, or you can always write down one of these sentences. Modal logic B corresponds to symmetrical frames. So our rule, our tree rule, is going to simulate symmetry. So we're going to say if we've got n arrow m in our tree already, then we're going to be able to switch it around and add m arrow n. Okay, so this looks just like the principle of symmetry. The modal logic K4, well, that corresponds to transitive frames. So we're going to add a rule that corresponds to transitivity. We're going to say if we've got lines in our branch n arrow m and m arrow l, then we can add n arrow l. Okay, so from the first one to the third one directly. And finally, modal logic K5, that corresponds to Euclidean frames. So we're going to add a rule that simulates Euclideanness. We're going to say if we can go from n to m and n to l, then we can extend our branch and add a new line from m to l. So for each condition, we add an extra tree rule. Okay, so if we're trying to do proofs in KT5, that is, we're saying, does this conclusion follow from these premises in KT5? Then we do a tree test, and we're allowed to use all of the rules that we talked about before, plus the T rule and the 5 rule. Okay, if it's KT5, that means we use the T rule and the 5 rule. If we need to, we're allowed to use all of those rules, but we're not allowed to use D rule, the B rule, or the 4 rule. On the other hand, if we were trying to do a proof in KDB4, then we would use the D rule, the B rule, and the 4 rule, but we wouldn't be allowed to use the T rule or the 5 rule. Get it? It's pretty simple. So really, it's just a case of learning the basic modal logic rules with the extra tags added. They're just the same as in propositional logic. The additional rules for box and diamond, plus, if we need them, these 5 rules here. That allows us to do pretty much all of the modal logic proofs that we would want to do. Okay guys, so there we have how to extend your modal logic proof trees to all the different systems. I think this is really, really useful stuff, and it's pretty easy to do once you've got the basic ideas. So if you've enjoyed this video, do me a favour, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Coming up next on the channel, I'm going to be going through some examples of using proof trees in modal logic. So if you want to get good at logic, the number one way is basically to go through loads of examples. I'm going to show you how to do that with some worked examples in the next video. If you've got any questions about this stuff, leave me a comment down below. I try and answer all the comments on this channel. I really enjoy engaging with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you back here soon.